Welcome back to the deep dive. You guys sent us something pretty crazy, and we had to take a look.
Yeah.
A spouse application
Oh, wow.
for this organization. It's called QKA.
Okay.
And let me tell you, this thing is intense. It is not your average dating profile. This goes way beyond, just name, age, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
And I think it really gives us a fascinating look into what this organization, QKA, values and the kind of relationships that they're looking to create.
Wow.
So you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So right off the bat, they're asking for a ton of information,
Yeah.
like an insane amount. We're talking medical history, financial records. They even want maintenance records for like your home and your car.
Oh, my gosh.
It's almost like they're trying to build this complete picture of your life, past, present, everything.
That's pretty intense.
It is. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
The first few questions, they seem pretty standard. Full name, date of birth, address, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But even here, there's some interesting details, like they ask for a friend name
A friend name.
and a chosen name in addition to your legal name.
Huh. What do you make of that?
I don't know. It makes you wonder, like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Do they have, like, their own internal culture, like naming conventions?
Maybe. It suggests they may have their own, like, social norms or rituals or something like that.
Like emphasizing, like, chosen identities or familial ties
Yeah.
beyond, like, traditional names.
Makes you wonder what kind of community they're trying to build here.
Yeah, for sure. They also want to know, like, how many siblings you have, your contact info, education, employment history.
Okay.
But they specifically require that applicants have had at least 2 employers.
Oh, interesting. Why two?
I know, that is kind of weird. It seems like they're really emphasizing work history and stability.
Yeah, it implies that their ideal member is someone with a proven track record, I guess, of commitment and responsibility.
Right, like you're not flaky. You're
Yeah, exactly.
a reliable person.
Stable.
Then they get into like physical characteristics. Height, weight, social security number, driver's license, passport info, marital status, whether you are looking for another partner.
Oh, they really want to know everything about you.
And get this, they require 3 photographs.
3.
3.
Okay.
2 portraits, and they specify light makeup and attire.
Okay.
And then a full body shot in formal wear.
Oh, wow.
And no filters or AI-generated images allowed.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. It's like they have a very specific image in mind.
I know.
The photograph requirements are interesting. The specific instructions on makeup and attire suggest that they have certain aesthetic standards,
Yes.
particularly for women, right?
All right.
And then it kind of hints at the importance of presentation and potentially adhering to a particular image within their community.
Yeah, that whole light makeup thing is kind of throwing me off.
Yeah.
And you remember how they asked for like friend name and chosen name? It's making me think, like, what are their social norms really like?
Yeah. It's certainly possible that these details, while seemingly minor, offer really valuable clues about the group's culture and internal dynamics.
Totally. Okay, and then it takes like a hard left turn.
Okay.
They ask about your medical and dental history.
Hmm.
Which, like, okay, getting pretty personal here.
The request for medical and dental records is a bit surprising. It could indicate a heightened concern for health, potentially for genetic predispositions. Makes you wonder how this information might actually factor into their matching criteria.
And then it gets even more personal.
Even more.
They ask about your body count
Oh, wow.
using that exact phrase.
Okay.
And they have a whole grading system for it. A, B, C, D, F. Like we're back in high school.
Seriously.
Pure, experienced, average, veteran, unsatisfactory.
Oh, my goodness. This body count question is so problematic. It's incredibly judgmental and just reinforces these harmful stereotypes about sexual experience, especially for women.
Yeah, it's basically reducing people to
Yeah.
their sexual history.
Right.
And assigning a value judgment based on that.
Exactly.
Oh, and they also specifically say, and I quote, rape doesn't count.
Oh, wow. That's really disturbing. It just completely trivializes sexual assault and further highlights how problematic this whole line of questioning is.
Okay. Then they want you to list 6 signature dishes.
Signature dishes.
Appetizer, vegetable dish, protein dish, starch dish, dessert, and a beverage.
Wow.
Complete with visual aids and instructions.
Are we applying for a spouse or a cooking show?
I know, right? It's like they're auditioning you for MasterChef or something.
Yeah. The emphasis on cooking, particularly for women, is quite striking. It really reinforces traditional gender roles and expectations within a relationship. Like they're looking for a partner who's going to fulfill specific domestic duties.
It's so interesting that that question comes right after the body count one.
Yeah.
Like they want someone who could be like a domestic goddess in the kitchen and also fit into their very narrow definition of sexual purity.
The juxtaposition of those two questions is definitely telling. It suggests a very specific and potentially restrictive ideal of what a partner should be within this whole QKA framework.
Yeah, I'm getting a very particular vibe here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there. Then they want your childhood and family life books.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. Like, what are we talking about? Baby books, photo albums? Like, this is getting creepy.
This request for, like, these books indicates a very intense level of scrutiny, like they're trying to access your entire life story, even those intimate details that are typically reserved for close family and friends.
Yeah, it's giving me major Big Brother vibes.
I can see that.
And then they want a list of personal and professional references, like 5 to 8 of them.
Wow. They are not messing around. It's like they're conducting a full background check.
I know, right?
Reinforces the notion of a very, very rigorous vetting process. They're not just relying on your self-reported information. They want to gather intel from people who actually know you, building this multifaceted profile of you as a potential partner.
Puts a lot of pressure.
It is.
Okay, and then we get to the financial stuff.
Oh, boy.
Buckle up. They want to know your annual salary or hourly rate, and they require pay stubs and income statements.
You're kidding.
Dead serious.
Wow.
And they even have a rating system based on income.
A rating system.
Ranging from, like, successful for those making over $1 million a year to unsatisfactory for those making less than $50,000.
Oh, my goodness. The emphasis on financial disclosure, especially with an actual rating system, is very telling. It suggests a highly materialistic and potentially hierarchical system within QKA where wealth and earning potential are extremely valued, especially for men.
Yeah, it's like they're ranking potential spouses based on their income bracket, whatever happened to love and compatibility.
Right. This strong focus on financial standing could be tied to their adherence to traditional roles. If they believe that men should be the primary providers, their earning potential becomes a crucial factor. It raises questions about their values and what constitutes a successful relationship within their community.
Okay, then they ask about vehicle ownership, insurance coverage.
Yeah.
Like home, auto, life, death, medical, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
And then this is interesting. They ask if you are a veteran and if you have any physical, mental, or visual impairments.
That last question about impairments is particularly concerning. It raises some serious questions about how those factors are perceived within QKA and whether they could actually lead to discrimination or exclusion.
It really makes you wonder if their definition of an ideal partner is incredibly narrow and potentially ableist.
For sure.
Okay, and get this. There's a whole section of the application specifically directed at female applicants.
Oh, no. What now?
So we already talked about that delightful body count question, but it gets so much worse.
Oh, great.
They ask women if they have a chaperone to pass them off to their spouse.
Seriously, what is this, the Victorian era?
I know, right? It implies a complete lack of agency for women.
Yeah.
And reinforces this idea that they need to be controlled and protected by male figures.
It's like they view women as property to be handed from one man to another.
It's so messed up. Okay, and then there's this question. Do you have your natural body intact?
What does that even mean?
I have no idea. Like, are they asking about cosmetic surgery, body modifications? It's incredibly vague and potentially discriminatory.
The vagueness of that question is definitely concerning. It allows for these broad interpretations and could potentially open the door for subjective judgments based on, like, personal preferences or cultural biases.
Right. It's like they want to control women's bodies down to the last detail.
Yeah.
And as if that wasn't enough, they also ask female applicants if they have excess facial and torial body hair.
You've got to be kidding me. Seriously.
I'm not kidding.
This question just reinforces unrealistic beauty standards and places undue emphasis on women's physical appearance. It plays into societal pressures for women to conform to specific, often unattainable, ideals of femininity.
It's like they have this checklist of what they consider an acceptable woman,
Yeah.
and anyone who doesn't fit that mold is automatically disqualified.
These questions directed at women consistently reinforce these traditional and potentially harmful gender stereotypes. It raises some serious red flags about QKA's treatment of women and the potential for inequality within these relationships.
It's all so unsettling. It's like they're trying to create Stepford wives,
Yeah.
perfectly groomed, financially secure, and completely subservient to their husbands.
The cumulative effect of these questions creates a really disturbing picture. It suggests a system that seeks to control and regulate women's bodies, behaviors, and choices, raising some serious ethical concerns about the power dynamics at play within QKA.
Okay, so we've got all that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they want to know about your personal beliefs.
Oh, great.
Religion, way of life, philosophy.
Okay.
They even want to know if you're an introvert, extrovert, or an ambivert.
These questions suggest that they really desire ideological alignment and compatibility. It's like they're seeking partners who share similar worldviews and social preferences, possibly indicating a desire for a certain level of homogeneity within their community.
Okay, but here's where it gets a little ridiculous, I think.
Okay.
For the men, they want to know if they can maintain their lawns with visual aids and instructions, of
Oh,
course.
come on.
I'm serious.
This question, while seemingly innocuous, really reinforces traditional gender roles, assigning yard work as a male responsibility.
Exactly. And they also ask men if they know how to repair basic things around the house.
Okay.
Again, with visual aids, instructions, and a video of them actually fixing something.
Oh, wow. So it's not enough to just say you can do it. You have to prove it.
Right. It's like they're auditioning for a handyman role, not a life partner.
Yeah, this emphasis on practical skills for men definitely points towards a prioritization of traditional masculinity, this reliance on men for household maintenance and repairs.
I just find it so interesting that they don't ask women about those things at all.
Yeah.
It's like they assume women are just inherently incapable of fixing a leaky faucet or mowing the lawn.
Right. This discrepancy in the questioning further reinforces the notion of distinct roles and responsibilities based on gender within these QKA relationships.
Okay, so after all of this, personal history, the financial disclosures, the invasive questions about bodies and beliefs, they finally ask about your dreams and goals.
Okay.
But even here, the questions are gendered.
Really?
Men are asked how many children they want, while women are asked how many children they desire.
Oh, that's interesting. That subtle difference in wording is actually quite significant. It suggests that men's desires for children are considered more definitive, while women's desires are potentially subject to negotiation or influence.
Like, men get to decide how many kids they'll have, while women just get to desire them.
Exactly. This further reinforces the potential for power imbalances and a lack of equal decision-making within these QKA relationships, particularly when it comes to family planning.
It's like they're not even trying to hide their bias at this point.
No, it's quite blatant.
And then there's the final kicker for the men. They're asked about their objectives in obtaining a potential partner or partners,
Okay.
and whether they are financially stable enough to provide wealth and resources within their primary family.
Wow. These questions so clearly position men as the providers and financial anchors within the relationship. It reinforces those traditional gender roles and suggests that women should be financially dependent on their husbands.
Yeah, it's like they're looking for a sugar daddy who can support his wife and kids in style. So much for love and equality.
It's disheartening. This focus on men's financial capabilities speaks volumes about their values and the type of relationship dynamic that they promote.
So we've gone through this entire application, and honestly, I'm just more confused than when we started. What does it all mean?
Yeah. What we see in this QKA spouse application is a highly detailed and selective process. It's clear they have a very strong emphasis on traditional values, financial stability, and a potentially hierarchical structure. The questions they raise, particularly those directed at women, are concerning and raise some serious questions about potential control, inequality, and harmful stereotypes within this organization.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to create a community based on these rigid social norms where everyone just fits into this predefined box.
Exactly. It offers us this fascinating, albeit concerning, glimpse into a worldview that seems to prioritize conformity and control over individuality and personal freedom.
Yeah. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener, and I'm sure our listeners are just as intrigued and maybe a little disturbed as we are.
I'm sure they are. This application has sparked a lot of questions about the motivations behind QKA and the potential implications of their matchmaking practices.
We'll delve into those questions and more when we come back for part 2 of our deep dive into the QKA spouse application. So stay tuned. See you then.
Bye.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are continuing our exploration of this QKA spouse application.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it has been a wild ride so far.
It has.
We've uncovered some pretty unusual requirements and gotten a glimpse into this worldview that seems to prioritize tradition and conformity and control.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating case study. This application reveals a lot about QKA's values and the kind of relationships they're trying to cultivate.
Exactly. And it raises so many questions, right? Like, what are the long-term implications of these matchmaking practices?
Right.
And most important, what does this tell us about the individuals who are choosing to participate in this system?
Those are the big questions that we need to grapple with.
Yeah.
But before we get there, I think it's helpful to zoom out a little bit and look at some of the overarching themes that emerge from this application.
Okay.
And one of the most striking, I think, is this emphasis on traditional gender roles.
Oh, absolutely. From the cooking and the cleaning to child rearing and financial provision, this application lays out very specific expectations for men and women within a QKA relationship.
It's like they're trying to turn back the clock to a time when men were the breadwinners and women were the homemakers.
Yes.
That's a key observation. The application consistently reinforces these traditional roles almost as if they're trying to recreate this idealized version of the past.
Right. Forget all that progress we've made in terms of gender equality. Let's go back to a simpler time when everyone knew their place.
This nostalgia for a bygone era is actually a pretty common thread in certain groups or communities that feel disillusioned with modern society.
Interesting.
They may see these traditional roles as a source of stability and order in a world that feels very chaotic and unpredictable.
But is that really a healthy way to approach relationships? Are we really going back to a time when women are expected to be completely dependent on their husbands and have little to no say in their own lives?
That's the danger, isn't it? This rigid adherence to traditional roles can be incredibly limiting and perpetuate harmful power imbalances within relationships.
For sure.
It essentially denies individuals the opportunity to, fully express themselves and explore their own potential.
And let's not forget that intense focus on purity and sexual history, particularly for women.
Oh, yeah.
Body count question? The chaperone requirement?
It's just so regressive.
It's creepy.
And frankly, creepy.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
It reduces individuals, especially women, to their sexual past and reinforces the idea that their worth is somehow tied to their virginity. This type of thinking perpetuates these harmful stereotypes and contributes to a culture of slut-shaming.
It's like they're trying to police women's sexuality and control their bodies. It's just a complete disregard for their autonomy and their right to make their own choices.
Yeah. And this control extends beyond sexuality. The application delves into every aspect of an applicant's life, from their medical records to their family history to their financial status.
Right. It's this extraordinary level of scrutiny, and it feels like this blatant attempt to create a very specific type of person.
It's like they're trying to mold people into these perfect little clones.
Right.
That will just seamlessly fit into their predetermined idea of a successful QKA couple.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to individuality and embracing our differences.
It suggests a deep fear of individuality and a strong desire for conformity. They seem to be striving for a community where everyone adheres to this very strict set of values and behaviors.
Okay. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, the glaring emphasis on wealth and earning potential.
Yeah.
Especially for men.
For sure.
It's like you're saying that money is the most important factor in a relationship.
The financial aspect is definitely a key theme here.
Yeah.
It suggests a very materialistic and potentially hierarchical system where wealth grants status and influence.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, if you're not rich, you're not worthy of love, which is a pretty messed up message to send, especially in a society that already places so much emphasis on wealth and status.
This focus on financial stability could also be tied to their belief in traditional gender roles that we discussed earlier.
Right.
If men are expected to be the primary providers, then their earning potential becomes a measure of their suitability as a husband.
So if you're a man who's struggling financially, you're basically out of luck.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
And it creates a system that favors the wealthy and further marginalizes those who are already disadvantaged.
Right.
It reinforces these existing inequalities and creates this very exclusive community based on financial status.
It's just so elitist and exclusionary.
It is.
And it completely ignores the fact that love and happiness can exist in relationships regardless of income.
Exactly. This application paints a picture of a community that values wealth and status over genuine connection and shared values.
So who are the people filling out these forms? Like, what can we infer about their motivations?
It's important to remember that we can't make sweeping generalizations about individuals based solely on an application. However, we can speculate about the type of person who would be drawn to this kind of rigid and controlling system.
Okay, give it your best shot. What kind of person do you think would find this appealing?
It's likely that they are individuals who highly value tradition, security, and conformity. They may be disillusioned with modern dating culture and seeking a more structured and predictable path to marriage. Perhaps they crave a sense of belonging and community that they feel is missing in their lives.
Maybe they're looking for a partner who just fits neatly into their preconceived notions of what a husband or wife should be, without the messiness and uncertainty of navigating a relationship in the real world.
That's a possibility. They may be willing to sacrifice personal autonomy and freedom of choice in exchange for the perceived stability and security that QKA seems to offer.
But where does love fit into all of this? It seems like it's almost an afterthought in their system.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's possible that love is a secondary consideration within this QKA framework. The emphasis on compatibility, shared values, and financial security suggests a more pragmatic approach to relationships where love is seen as a byproduct of a well-matched union, rather than a prerequisite.
So it's like an arranged marriage, but with a 21st century twist.
In some ways, yes, it's a system that prioritizes logic and compatibility over emotion and spontaneity. It's a very calculated approach to finding a partner.
Right.
One that leaves very little room for chance or the unexpected.
And that seems kind of sad, doesn't it? To
Yeah.
be so focused on finding the perfect match on paper that you lose sight of the human element, the spark, the connection that makes love so special.
It raises questions about the nature of intimacy and the role of choice in romantic relationships.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if these QKA couples are truly happy or if they're just going through the motions, fulfilling their predetermined roles in this meticulously crafted social experiment.
It's a question we can only speculate about, but it's a valid concern.
We've talked a lot about the themes and the implications of this QKA spouse application.
Yeah.
But I want to circle back to something you said earlier, that this worldview isn't limited to some fringe group. Like, how widespread is this kind of thinking?
It's important to remember that these ideas about traditional gender roles, purity, and financial security are deeply ingrained in many cultures and societies around the world. They're not just limited to a specific group or community. They're woven into the fabric of our social norms and expectations.
Right. Like, we see it in movies, in TV shows, in advertising, even in our own families.
Exactly.
These messages are all around us, subtly shaping our perceptions of what's normal and acceptable in relationships.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these influences and to critically examine our own beliefs about love, relationships, and gender roles.
So even if we're not filling out a QKA spouse application, we're still being influenced by these same societal pressures.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so crucial to be mindful of those influences and to make conscious choices about the kind of relationships we want to create.
So what can we do? How do we challenge these harmful ideas and create a more equitable and fulfilling vision of love?
It starts with awareness. We need to recognize these harmful stereotypes and call them out when we see them. We need to challenge the media representations that reinforce these ideas and have these open and honest conversations about love, relationships, and gender equality.
We need to create a culture where individuals are free to choose their own paths to love and happiness without being constrained by these rigid social norms or expectations.
Exactly. It's about promoting individuality, respecting diverse choices, and recognizing that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to love and relationships.
We've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the themes, the implications, the motivations behind QKA, and this broader societal context. But before we wrap up, I kind of want to shift gears a bit and talk about, like, alternatives to this highly structured, controlled approach to matchmaking.
That's a great idea. It's important to remember that there are so many other ways to connect with others and build meaningful relationships that don't involve such rigid criteria or invasive scrutiny.
So, like, what are some healthier, more empowering approaches to finding love?
Well, for starters, I think it's crucial to focus on building those genuine connections based on shared interests, values, and mutual respect. It's about getting to know someone as a person, not just as a collection of data points on an application.
Right, like actually having conversations, sharing experiences, and discovering what makes someone tick.
Yeah.
It's about letting those connections develop organically without the pressure of fitting into some predefined mold.
Precisely. It's about engaging in Open and honest communication, being vulnerable, and allowing yourself to be seen for who you truly are.
And that takes time, right? It's not about finding the perfect match right away.
Right.
It's about building a relationship gradually,
Mm-hmm.
brick by brick, through shared experiences and this like genuine connection.
Absolutely. And this process of discovery should be joyful and exciting, not stressful or anxiety-inducing. It's about embracing the journey, not just focusing on the destination.
And it's important to remember that healthy relationships are built on this foundation of equality and mutual respect. There shouldn't be this power dynamic where one person is in control and the other is subservient.
Exactly. Both partners should feel valued, heard, and supported. They should have the freedom to be themselves, to grow and evolve as individuals, both within and outside of the relationship.
And let's not forget the importance of self-love and self-acceptance. You can't expect someone else to love you if you don't love yourself first.
That's such an important point. It's about recognizing your own worth, embracing your strengths and weaknesses, and being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, because when you approach relationships from that place of self-love and self-acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
you're more likely to attract partners who value and respect you for who you are, not for how well you fit into their predetermined box.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a far cry from the QKA model, where individuals are judged and ranked based on their adherence to these rigid criteria.
So, if you're out there looking for love, don't be afraid to break free from the societal expectations and the pressure to conform.
Embrace your individuality, cultivate self-love, and focus on building those genuine connections with people who appreciate you for who you are.
And remember, love is not a transaction.
Right.
It's a journey of shared growth, mutual respect, and unwavering support.
Beautifully said. And with that, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into the QKA Spousal application. We've explored some pretty heavy themes. But hopefully we've also shed some light on the importance of challenging those norms and creating a more equitable and fulfilling vision of love.
I'm sure our listeners have a lot to think about after this discussion.
I'm sure they do.
We'll be back for part 3 to explore some alternative approaches to finding love and building those healthy relationships. So stay tuned.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We spent the last 2 parts kind of dissecting this QKA spouse application.
Yeah.
It's given us a lot to think about, about societal expectations, gender roles, and what we really value in relationships.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've delved into some pretty complex and thought-provoking territory.
We have. And in this final part, I want to kind of focus on building a more empowering and authentic vision of love.
Okay.
Because let's face it, the QKA model, with its emphasis on like control and conformity,
Right.
it just doesn't resonate with most people.
I agree. It's essential to remember that there are countless ways to connect with others and cultivate fulfilling relationships that don't involve these rigid criteria or this kind of invasive scrutiny.
So what are some healthier, more empowering approaches to finding love? What advice would you give to someone who's looking for a genuine connection, but they don't want to feel like they're auditioning for a role in someone else's life?
I think one of the most important things is to focus on building genuine connections based on shared interests, values, and mutual respect. It's about getting to know someone as a person, not just as like a collection of data points on an application or a checklist of desirable traits.
Right. Like actually having conversations, sharing experiences, and discovering what makes someone tick. Letting those connections develop organically without the pressure of conforming to someone else's expectations.
Exactly. It's about engaging in that open and honest communication, being vulnerable, and allowing yourself to be seen for who you truly are, quirks and all.
And that takes time, right? Like it's not about finding that perfect match right away. It's about building a relationship gradually, brick by brick, through shared experiences and a deepening understanding of each other.
Precisely. And this process of discovery should be enjoyable and exciting, not stressful or anxiety-inducing. It's about embracing that journey, the ups and downs, the moments of awkwardness and laughter.
It's about recognizing that relationships are a dance, a process of like learning and growing together, not a destination that you arrive at fully formed.
Yeah. And I think we also can't forget the importance of self-love and self-acceptance. You can't expect someone else to love you if you don't love yourself first.
Right.
It's about recognizing your own worth, embracing your strengths and your weaknesses, and being comfortable in your own skin.
Because when you approach relationships from that place of self-love and self-acceptance, you're more likely to attract partners who value and respect you for who you are, not for how well you fit into their kind of preconceived notions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that creates a foundation for a much healthier and more fulfilling relationship dynamic.
So if you're out there looking for love, don't get caught up in these societal pressures or feel like you need to conform to someone else's definition of worthy.
Embrace your individuality, cultivate self-love, and focus on building those genuine connections with people who appreciate you for who you are.
Because at the end of the day, love shouldn't be about control, conformity, or meeting external expectations.
It should be about connection, joy, and mutual respect. It should be about two individuals coming together to create something beautiful and unique.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the QKA spouse application. It's been a wild ride exploring a worldview that really seems to prioritize control and conformity over individuality and freedom of choice.
It has been. It's been an eye-opening experience, to say the least.
But I think we've also learned a lot about what we don't want in relationships.
Yeah.
And hopefully this deep dive has inspired our listeners to think critically about the kind of love they're seeking and to embrace a more authentic and empowering vision of what relationships can be.
That's the goal. Because love, in its truest form, should liberate and empower us, not confine us.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic, so stay tuned.